Another Lions Sunday coming up. Once again, joined by Mike Payton from A to Z Sports. The Lions once again on the road this week. I don't think they will ever play another game at Ford Field. Feels like they've been on the road every week. Sunday night football against the Texans. And Mike, since the last time we spoke, there has been a new addition to the roster. Darius Smith coming over from the Cleveland Browns, 5 sacks in 9 games this season. A nice addition moving forward from the front office in the trade deadline. Za'Darius now in Detroit. He spoke for the first time on Friday. What did you take from that? What did you like about this trade? And can Lion fans maybe expect him to suit up pretty quick Sunday night in Houston?
Well, I think it's a huge addition. Of all the things that the Lions, could have done, I know there were a lot of people who wanted Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, but those were never real things that could happen. The Lions did call on Crosby and were, swiftly told no. But this was the best thing that they could do that was possible. This is a guy that's been playing for, a few years now. Played for the Packers, played for the Vikings, has been a very successful player. Been really, really good for the Browns lately. I think if the Browns had a winning record, they probably wouldn't have made this deal. But you mentioned 5 sacks. He's also had 21 of his 27 pressures in just the last 5 games alone. So he's playing really well. He's really happy to be here. This is where he wanted to be. He kind of spoiled that a few weeks ago, where he said he was really interested in playing in Detroit, so he could play against the Packers and the Vikings twice a year, and be a part of this culture that's here. And yeah, he put out a shaking my head tweet that kind of scared people on Tuesday morning, but he cleared that up, said it was taking too long. And that was the thing that he was, worried about. And he really wanted to be here. And now he is. And I think it's a great addition. And I think he fits just so very well.
When the Lions head to the Lone Star State again this weekend, another new player on the roster, but it's a new old player, Jameson Williams, back from his 2 game suspension. Do you expect JMO to just go out there and be the guy we saw in the early portion of the season? Do you think they're gonna limit his reps now that he's been gone for 2 weeks? What do you expect the workload to be like for Williams on Sunday?
I think it should just be right back to normal, just business as usual. While he wasn't able to practice these last 2 weeks, he was with the team. He was in the building. He was, getting in workouts with trainers and stuff like that, and sitting in on meetings. But he wasn't, obviously couldn't practice. That was the only thing he couldn't do. But he's still in great shape. He's not coming back from an injury or anything like that. So I would expect that he's going to be, just right back to normal. I think they're going to throw to him as much as they can, especially with this defense that has such a great defensive front. They're going to want to get that ball out.
Yeah, before we move forward and talk about Sunday, just a quick recap from this past week. I mean, this was a game against the Packers last week that you and I were talking about, and you thought it would be a close game. I think a lot of people thought it would be a close game, but Kirby Joseph kind of added that separation before the end of the first half, and the Lions just cruised to victory. I mean, at this point, does anything surprise you with this team who through 8 games is the clear cut, best team in the NFC, possibly the best team in the league.
Yeah, I think that was the big test for them because I think everybody was looking at it and thinking, well, can they play in the weather? It's going to be really rainy there and it's going to be windy and how is that going to affect them? But they're just built for that kind of thing because they run the ball a lot and when they run enough, they start to set up the pass and Goff, who's always kind of carried this narrative around that he's not that great in the weather, just had a really good game and was accurate and did everything that they needed to do. And their defense made the stops that they needed to make. And I think all the problems you thought the Lions would have in that game, the Packers actually had. The ball was too slippery, the throws weren't going well, multiple fumbles from the quarterback, and just like everything seemed to work out for the Lions that day. And I think, really the only test is can they play in the snow? And I guess maybe we'll find that out in December against the Bears. And other than that, it's all indoors from here.
it might seem like a silly question at this point, but in this league, I mean, in most leagues, you want to get hot at the right time, right? Going right into playoff time. There's no concerns with this team at the moment. No major concerns, at least. Could they be peaking at the right time? Is this sustainable? What they're doing every week, is this sustainable through the second half of the year and then a playoff run? I mean, there can really do no wrong at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are teams out there that peak at the wrong time, and it's kind of weird because it's almost like uh, you expected the Lions to have like maybe two or three really good games in a row, but that's not happening. They're like having a bunch of good games in a row. So I don't see any, especially on their upcoming schedule. I don't really see any time where they just kind of fall down the hole a little bit and fall into the well and everything goes away. I think they're going to remain this team for the rest of the year, pending that everyone stays healthy and they continue to run that ball, man. I mean, that's really the big thing. No one can stop these two guys, and when these two guys get going, their pass attack just gets so much better, and they're able to defensively, even without Aiden Hutchinson, who, by the way, hasn't played since week 6 and is still third in the league in pressures right now, which is just insane. But God, that guy would have won the Defensive Player of the Year, no doubt about it. But even without Hutchinson, like they're still able to get stops. They're on the road. They're allowing just 25% scoring percentage in the red zone. Only two touchdowns they've allowed on the road in their own red zone this year. Like it's insane. I just think that they just have it right now, and it's just I don't know if that's something that you can lose when you're just playing as well as you are.
I mean, I think one of the most impressive things at this point is, they're not playing schmucks every week. Maybe
Yeah.
outside of Tennessee, these are playoff teams that they're beating every week. The Vikings, the Packers, teams that are going to be in the hunt to get into the playoffs, and that doesn't change this week. You're going to play a Texans team that was coming into the year the clear-cut favorite to be the AFC South champs, a team that has been possibly disappointing could be the right word. They've lost two out of their last three. No Stephon Diggs this weekend. Nico Collins coming back though. What do you see in terms of matchup wise, the Lions and the Texans, a team that the Lions haven't beat in a long time?
Yeah, they haven't beat them since the very first time that they faced, which was I think 2004. The Texans were like a brand new team. Um, yeah, it's the thing that is going to be really good for the Lions is that this Texans offensive line is probably the worst in football, and they are just. I mean, I think Stroud's been sacked 30 times already, and you can get to them and you can put pressure, and that is what this team needs to do. And with Zadarius Smith, who we haven't actually been told that he's going to play on Sunday. There's been little hints that he is, but we haven't actually got a full confirmation that that's happening. But if he does, then that is going to be huge, a huge debut for him to go
If
up
he
against
does
this.
play, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. If he does play, as a pass rusher, how much do you need to know the playbook and the schemes, do you think?
Right.
Or is it kind of they can throw him in and say, when they say hike, go get the quarterback?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's really not that deep of a a thing like you're saying. And Campbell just a few weeks ago when asked, if they were looking for somebody that they could trade for that they would be able to put right in without having to go through the rigmarole of learning the playbook and all that. Like this is what he said they were looking for. So, and Smith is that guy, 32 years old. I mean, he's seen everything that you could possibly see in the NFL. I think he's ready to go. They just throw him right in. There is the whole thing where he hasn't had a bye week because the Browns are going on their bye week this week.
Hmm.
And obviously he just got traded. So it's whether or not they do that. They did give him a couple of extra days before he had to report to practice, which was he reported today on Friday. Um, we'll see what they go with. I wouldn't be surprised if they held him out, but at the same time, I really do think they are going to put him in this game. And if he is, attacking this offensive line is going to be huge for them. And they get Josh Pascal back as well, plus that interior defensive line with Reeder and McNeil, who had 7 pressures last week. Really good game for him. I think that they can get some pressure on this unit for sure.
And, with the rest of the defense and the secondary, Texans getting Collins back, and then we know what Stroud can do with his arm, as well as with his legs. What do you see matchup wise there, and what challenges do the Texans provide through the air?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that he's a smart player, and he's picked up the NFL like really quick, which a lot of rookies don't do, and I think you see that this year. Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick, hasn't looked that great. Jaden Daniels has number 2. Maybe there's something about the number 2 pick. I don't know. That's what Stroud was too. But I think that yeah, he definitely has that mobility, and it's really all going to come down to can the secondary uh, cover things well, give the defensive line some time to, maybe get some coverage sacks or something like that. But I really think that what you got to do is keep him from running. You've got to keep him in that pocket, and if you can do that, that's going to help a lot. But he can throw that ball. And he doesn't have Diggs, and he doesn't have Nico Collins, but he still has Tank Dell, and he still has some guys over there that can do some things if you get the ball to him. So it's really gonna be all about keeping that guy in the pocket.
And then, a Texans team that you thought their strength would be the offense coming into the year. It's actually been the opposite. It's been the defense. But at this point, who can stop this Lions offense? It feels like, it doesn't matter, the Vikings, the Packers, all these teams that have had, good defensive teams just haven't been able to stop them. Does Ben Johnson have something up his sleeve this week? Do they just keep, business as usual? Business as usual. He does have something up his sleeve every week. But what do you expect out of the offense this week?
Yeah, I think there's going to be this is a really good defensive line with Daniil Hunter and Danico Autry and Will Anderson if he plays, which kind of seems like he will. Like they're getting in on basically everybody. So I think that you can expect some trouble for the Lions offensive line, even though it's the best in the league. I think there's a chance maybe that Goff will get sacked once or twice, but other than that, it's really like you said, it's just really hard to understand what this offense is doing all the time because they're always doing something different. They're always have something up their sleeve, and I think you're going to see them, just go out there try to run that ball more. And if I were the Texans, I would try to take that run away, obviously, make them more one-dimensional. But I just don't know if there's a team that can do that right now. And it seems cocky because we all love the Lions, and here we are saying this, but like it's just they're kind of a juggernaut at the minute at the moment.
And speaking of the juggernaut offense, something we haven't talked about too much this year, but was a bit of a headline, in the last couple weeks was Ben Johnson and maybe his interest in the Bears job this previous offseason. Maybe that's a job that's open this coming offseason. Is it fair to expect at this point that he's gone after this season? Fans thought maybe he was gone after what they did last year. Aaron Glenn could very well go too, but Johnson seems like the guy that it would be really surprising if he was back next year.
No, I think Aaron Glenn is gone. I think Ben Johnson stays. Uh,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, no, um, I think that right now being a head coach in this league is really hard. A new head coach, it's
Mhm.
really hard because you're going into a world where teams are expecting you to win immediately and to have everything go perfect as fast as possible. And when that doesn't happen, a lot of these guys are getting fired after 2, 3 years, and you find yourself in a situation where now you have to earn your way back up that ladder, and a lot of guys don't. And I feel like if I were Ben Johnson, I'm really good at what I do right now. And I've got a great situation where I can call plays, which is what I love to do the most. I get paid very well. And
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I can go home to my kids and not be nearly as stressed as I would be if I were a head coach. And I think they love the area because they've been here for so long now. Uh, I just really think that I really think he's going to stay because I just think he wants to be an offensive coordinator. And I could be wrong, and there's a good chance that I will, but that is just how I feel about the situation. And there's some guys that just like that. Steve Spagnuolo from the Chiefs
Mhm.
could have been a head coach years ago. He just loves to be a defensive coordinator. I just think Ben Johnson is that same way, and it's just a great gig. I don't know why anybody would want to leave it.
So on the flip side, do you think Glenn has more of a inclination to get that crack at being a head coach?
Yeah, I think Aaron Glenn is, I mean, that guy is, he's so much like Dan Campbell in the sense that he's just a leader of men and everybody loves him. Last year, the NFL polled a bunch of players in the league and he was voted the most popular defensive coordinator, most popular coordinator altogether in the entire NFL. It's just because everybody loves this guy. They listen to him. They believe in what he's selling. He has everything that you need to be a head coach. I don't know if Johnson could do that. Like, I don't know if he could command a room the way that Aaron Glenn could. And I think the Saints are going to be all over him if things don't go right with Rizzi, which you never know. They might, but if they don't, I think they're going to be all over him as their new head coach.
At Sunday Night Football, second time this year, Lions are on NBC. Do they get their first win over the Texans in 20 years? And how do you think it goes down Sunday at Energy Stadium?
Yeah. Initially, when I did my preseason predictions, I predicted this would be a loss. I am not predicting that anymore. I'm switching back. I'm going with a Lions win.
Who's going to
I
beat them
think
at this point? How could you predict them to lose?
right now the only team that really scares me is the Bills, and that's not for another few weeks.
Yeah.
But I'm going Lions 35, Texans 24.
All right, you heard it. You heard it there. We'll see if the Lions can get that first win over the Texans since 2004, and Mike will catch up with you next week before, yes, they are back home. Take on the Jaguars. We will
Finally.
catch up with you before that.